Hello everyone, Joe with Forged here. Something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time now is do a little video documentary on the race car we've been building for the shop, which is my car. Something we decided to do just about a year ago. We were going to try to get ready for Texas by starting off with just building a roll cage for the car. Well, there's been a lot of twists and turns over the past year. Biggest one being that I had my son just over a year ago at the end of January, and I quickly learned that building a race car and having a newborn at the same time is a very difficult task. So that's really been most of the reason why we haven't been able to get out and race. We've just haven't had the time to get it done. So over the past year or so, we've been working hard, making updates, constant improvements. You know, like, hey, it's like once you dip your toes in the water with the roll cage, we decided, you know, what the heck, let's just go all in. And we've been slowly making changes and updates. We go out and test a little bit and find out, hey, I didn't really like that, let's improve this. So that's where we stand today. I'm going to start off with just going over what we've been doing here in the past few weeks, and along the way, as we do more updates, I'll show you guys what we've done over the past year. I think we'll have quite a bit of content coming out here between now and Texas. You know, one of the things we've tried to do with this car is make it the lightest car to compete in its class. We had this idea about a year ago, and we've been working on it ever since. I think a lot of other people have had that same idea and have shown off what they can do over the past few events. What you can do with a lightweight GT-R is pretty amazing. We got guys almost going sixes stock location with these lightweight cars. We had a 58mm car go 750s on just a 58mm turbo. There's guys pushing the limits, and we hope to be doing the same with our 68mm class car. Then I've been working on over the weekend was trying to put a manual steering rack in the car. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have deleted your power steering, but if you're running a power steering rack with no power steering connected, it is very, very difficult to turn this thing. It kind of came down to a safety thing that we were concerned about. I mean, none of us have gone this fast here at the shop, and I know a lot of guys either can keep the power steering or they run something like an old MR2 Spider power steering pump and hook it up in the back and get the power steering still functional, but removing the factory hydraulic rack so you can get more room in the engine bay. But we wanted to keep the thing as lightweight as possible, so one of the things I did, I've been working with Tony Palo and the T1 team on the manual rack that they've been putting in their cars. And that's what I worked on over the weekend, so let's take a look. Alright, so what you guys are looking at here is the factory subframe cradle. It's extremely heavy. And the factory power steering rack. So I've already removed the control arms and the tie rod ends off of the factory rack. And as you can see, it's quite a bit of material on the factory subframe, and you'll see what the aftermarket AK Motorsports subframe looks like. But the way we were dealing with deleting the manual rack was what a lot of race cars do that don't have a manual rack option. And we just pumped all the fluid out of the rack, turning it lock to lock. We removed the little restrictor inside the rack and just filled the thing up with a little bit of grease. And then we looped the lines together with a little ventilation. So we had the steering working pretty well, but it was still extremely heavy. And one of the things that makes it a little bit more difficult when you're running the car set up the way we are with a full Motec, which we'll go into more detail on another video, is the power steering assist, variable assist, is not functional, which makes it even more difficult to turn the wheel. So as you guys can tell, this is quite a stark contrast to what the factory rack and cradle looks like. I haven't weighed everything yet, but everything online published says that this thing saves about 40% weight over the OEM components. But One of the things we had to do to get this rack to work was fabricate all the mounts and get the steering geometry right so this thing would even function properly. That took us about 8 hours to get it all lined up and fabricated. And you can see here, it doesn't mount the same way that the OEM rack does. So what we had to do is build some bracketry and some pieces to triangulate it so it doesn't move around on us here. And then the biggest challenge was getting the OEM steering column to line up with the new location of the rack. So the only thing that I could come up with to retain the column and not have to go with an aftermarket column was to extend the steering shaft. So basically what we did was cut in a sleeve that made it so we could kind of adjust the length appropriately, and if we had to fudge the angle just a little bit, we could get it in there. And I think it turned out pretty well. It turns lock to lock, no problem, no wobble. Everything is within a tenth of a degree in terms of the slope of the rack to everything else, and it still maintains the appropriate steering geometry out to the tie rod ends. So we're pretty proud of it. You know, thanks again for T1 to supply us these racks. I know Tony and team are working on more of a plug-and-play solution, and I can only imagine that's going to be some bracketry that bolts into the factory power steering bolt locations with those two holes on that like infinity loop looking piece of steel there, and then loop it over to that bracket that we had to manufacture and weld on for support. So this is definitely something, after I saw how Tony and his team at World Cup had their cars just kind of steering around the pits with one arm. That's not how we're steering our car. We're putting both of our shoulders into it and really cranking on this thing, especially getting around the water box and being able to make quick steering corrections when under power. We just didn't want to have to be focused on how much effort we got to put into the steering. We just want to be able to steer the car and not think about it too much. So we'll give some more video updates throughout the week. This is just the first of many, and we'll talk more about how the car was put together, why we did certain things on the car, and I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you.